But welcome everybody to Writers Morning Out, a free gathering of writers of any genre, of any level, sponsored by the North Carolina Writers Network. Two quick announcements from the network. The spring conference is still open. It will be in Asheville from May 2nd to May 4th. And I put a link in the chat if you want to explore that a little bit more. Also, the Squire Summer Workshops are going to be held July 24th to 27th at Davidson College. I put a link in there as well. And next month, we are reading When the Jessamine Grows for our Reading as Writers event. Donna Everhart, she's one of our North Carolina Writers Network members, and she has graciously come to agree to speak with us next month. So if you get a chance, please pick up the book. It's not super thin, so get started now, but it's a fantastic book, and we really look forward to discussing it with you and to having her tell us about her process. So without further ado, we'll get started today for our semi-annual Slush Pile event. We have Steevijane Parks as our fearless reader today. She's a retired clinical psychologist who currently spends her time narrating audiobooks and painting abstracts. Welcome, Stevie. Thank you. Noah Stetzer is Associate Director of Bull City Press out of Durham, North Carolina. He is also the author of Because I Can See Needing a Knife, and his poems can be found at various journals. Noah's work has received support from Warren Wilson MFA program for writers, Breadloaf Writers Conference, Lambda Literary, and the Adirondack Center for Writing. He currently lives in Salt Lake City. Ty Stumpf, welcome Ty, thank you. The Humanities Department Chair at Central Carolina Community College and is the author of the chapbook Suburban Burn, which was published by Main Street Rag Press. And Tracy Crow is the founder of Tracy Crow Literary Agency. She is also the president CEO of Millspeak Foundation, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to supporting the creative endeavors of military veterans and their families. She is a former assistant professor of journalism and creative writing and teaches writing workshops throughout the country in fiction, memoir, and publishing, and currently teaches in the online MFA program for Southern New Hampshire University and as a visiting instructor for the Queen's University of Charlotte MFA program. So welcome everyone. We will go ahead and get started. Does everyone have their little, I know in the past we've had some sound issues with the ringers, but if everybody's got that.
Yes. It'd probably be helpful.
Hear that?
Okay.
I have one and I've tested it multiple times. Here's hoping you can actually hear it. So
Okay.
Yes, same.
Try it.
If not, you can raise your little hand at the bottom of the screen.
fair.
Okay, can you each do your sound? Because I only heard Tracy's.
Mine.
And mine is,
I can hear that. Okay.
yeah, I've tried. I've switched my Zoom to like be musicians and all that kind of, I can't. So I will just yell loudly, I guess, if that's all right.
Or clap or something.
Great.
So are we gonna put it on a screen, like a screen share, or
I could do that if you want, or do you want to just read them?
What do other people want? I can just read them if you want, but sometimes people like to see it. I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know if
Let me pull it up here.
I'm gonna turn my face off if I can find it. Uh-oh. Okay, stop video. There.
Let me pull this up.
Penny, while you're doing that, can I ask a question? I was not at the last slush pile, so I want to just be sure that things are the same as I recall. We're still running the imaginary Friday afternoon. Is that right?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
And
so
is
it's Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. Everyone's you're tired. You're ready to go home. What would be your feedback on these submissions? We do have 9 submissions today, and I will go ahead and share them. I think they're fantastic, but I'm curious to get your input on them. Let's see. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. All right, Stevie, when you're ready.
Okay. This one, the first one is called Little Bird. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Dora straightened Jude's navy woolen lapels with a tug and brushed a crumb from her reddened cheek with unusual impatience. And she ignored the gentle warmth of the October sun, sheltered beneath the alcove of the station, unconcerned that Lithuania's biting cold Haemusvėjus would soon arrive. Jude stomped her new shoes defiantly upon the pavement, her long brown ringlets swinging and then resettling, as she pivoted to gaze up and down the tracks with the same restiveness as her mother. "You've got your hands full with this one," Anna said, placing a protective hand on her niece's shoulders. "Shouldn't it be here already?" Jude whined. "Soon, soon, Patience, daughter. Look at all the other passengers waiting." "But where's Sadie? Grandfather said he was coming with a surprise for me." "Has he ever disappointed you? Patience, Bubala." Dora inhaled, fidgeting with the woolen belt at her waist and exchanging an exasperated glance with Anna. She eyed the overflowing luggage trolleys at the end of the platform, searching for their shiny black and brass steamer trunk. Packing over several days, she assembled what she'd imagined they'd need. 4 seasons, much like Lithuania, just as cold in the winter, hot and humid in the short, intense summers. Even a few baby things, just in case. At the last minute, their mother, Marie, surprised her with the silver toasting cups wrapped in linen cloth, and Dora snatched the blue and white ceramic pitcher from the table, unable to imagine a day without it. But Marie's stubborn absence now at the station flooded Dora with waves of doubt and homesickness. And where was Yossel? What if he didn't make it already? She felt as untethered as the dry leaves blowing along the tracks, a disconnectedness that no relic from home would ever relieve.
I'll jump in first if that's all right, everyone. I know the point where I had trouble. And the point where I had trouble was, but where is Zadie? Grandfather said he was coming with a surprise for me. And my reason for that was I went back and counted to make sure I wasn't incorrect. I had 5 people referenced at that point, and I was confused. I didn't know who was who and what was what. Obviously, anytime we start a story, the rate of revelation is pretty fast at the beginning, but I felt overwhelmed with the characters. I think this needs to start a little slower in terms of how I meet the number of folks that I meet by name. But the midpoint of the first page, I was already feeling like there's too many folks in one place.
I think Tracy, did you sound the horn next? I sounded, and then shortly after Ty clapped his hands, and I had the same note. Oddly enough, I assume there were a lot of people here, and there was a lot of information, and I feel like we've the 3 of us have encountered this before, where there's an impulse to get us like to set the scene. Like, I want to make sure everybody has the backstory so I can go ahead and tell my story. And I got a sense of that, but I felt overwhelmed with details, information. I understood that all of this, I'm assuming all of this is vital and critical. And so I'm trying to hold all these details in my mind as we get down the page. And so, like you, I had underlined the different names, and I was like, okay, I got a lot of people here, but I got a lot of other things going on as well. And so I just want to point out that the way that this particular submission comes on my desk, there's I guess a chapter subtitle that's doing an awful lot of work for you, writer. And so I would encourage you, if you're leaving that subtitle there, which I think you should, I think it's great, because that's quick. It's quick. I know what the time is. I know where we are. And so I don't need details about the fact that they're in the train station. platforms and station and all that stuff. I already know they're in the train station. So maybe losing some of those, all of that detail up there, because it's in that very brief moment in the subtitle, to spend a little more time fleshing out who all is there. Just so that there's not quite the avalanche of detail. Because as a reader on this first page, I'm assuming like everything is vital, so I have to keep all this in my head, and it was like one fact too many.
Okay. Are you finished, Noah?
I am.
Okay. I actually had written down that I was going to blow the horn, but I didn't because I was enjoying Stevie's read. But I'll tell you where I had written it down. I had written it down at the line, soon, soon, patient's daughter. And the reason I had at that point is because I was already getting confused. Niece, this other character, the hand on the shoulder of the niece, and then Jude comes back in. But then we have this patient's daughter, which almost makes it sound as if this is Anna saying patient's daughter, but we've already introduced her as the niece. So just a tip there, be sure, since that's supposed to be Dora, after I've gone back and reread it, just be sure that you, the writer, reintroduce Dora with some sort of gesture or something so that we have her back in that. And we're very clear and we're not confused as to niece, shoulder, daughter, and all of that. So that's where, because if it's late on a Friday afternoon and I'm already confused right there, chances are I'm going to stop. I agree with every single thing Ty and Noah said. There are some really interesting details here that I thought made it rich, but there were almost an overloading of details. And when that happens, and we've talked about this a little bit before in other slush pile contests, it's almost as if they all are weighted the same when there are that many details. So keep that in mind. The placement of certain details, like what falls at the end of a sentence, is what we typically remember and resonate with the most. So think about where you're placing your details, how many adjectives or details need to go into a single sentence. Better to keep it as simple as possible, but sensory. But I will tell you that I absolutely love the last sentence. I love that last sentence about being untethered as the dry leaves had disconnected, that no relic from home would ever relieve. I mean, that was really quite beautiful. But I have to tell you, chances are I wouldn't have made it that far, only because of the confusion already halfway down the page. So I hope that helps. There's a lot of good going on here, but we've got to like spread it out a little bit, slow it down maybe a little bit, hone in on which of those details are the most important. Hope that makes sense. Okay.
I had a I will say I don't necessarily agree with the advice I'm about to say, but I understand why I was given it one time. It's something I wrote. Somebody suggested don't start on the way to something, start on the start that you're there. And I think that's probably a little ham-fisted to say, but the other side of that I understand, which is that notion of it's that setup sometimes before we actually get to the thing that is quote unquote important. And I'll pass that along in a little bit of candor that I don't think it's a perfect piece of advice, but it's not a horrible one either. Sometimes the question is, can we start where things are going as opposed to warming up with who are the folks we're meeting before we get there?
Okay. Openings are hard. They really are. I mean, they're hard. You can think about this, you can overthink it. You can go too far ahead and then feel like you got to backtrack and provide all this. I mean, we've already gotten to some backstory here with the teacups and that. So we've already slipped into some backstory. They're hard. They're hard. Openings are hard. Keep tweaking. Keep tweaking. Stevie, you ready for the second one?
Yes, okay. All right, this one is creative nonfiction and it's called Porn. Next week's assignment is a free write. 500 words or less, unless the energy is flowing. Any topic, any genre. Just pick something you're passionate about. Jane paused as 6 faces stared back at her from their little boxes on Zoom. Think of interesting characters and their relationships. Use a setting that will stimulate their senses with colors, sounds, smells, even touch. You know, I've never had a student submit porn before. Jane froze. Microphones were muted, so she sensed more than she heard their reactions. Christy, the overachiever, had been diligently taking notes and now was staring at the point of her pen.
Hi, good. How are you? Good.
Oh, somebody needs to mute, I guess. Okay, staring at the point of her pen, still connected to that penultimate four-letter word. Hannah's eyebrows were raised and her mouth was drawn up into a little, ooh. James, the geriatric teenager in the leftmost box, was silently snickering. Oh shit, he's gonna do it. Jane remembered his last piece featured a nude couple trekking across a post-apocalyptic hellscape. What floodgate from his damned-up psyche would her statement open? What would flow out onto the page this time? Jane had no idea where her last comment came from. She'd been teaching her whole life and had never before been deliberately provocative. It wasn't that the topic of sex had never come up. In fact, on sabbatical at Mount Holyoke, she taught a 2-semester course on feminist literary theory, from the poetry of Sappho of Lesbos to Shakespeare's Beast with Two Backs. Nothing produced so much as a titter. The in-class discussion were lively while frank, dotted with references to personal experiences. Not once did their essays devolve into what the eye of the beholder would call porn.
Well, I'll start. Oh, did anybody ring in? Nobody.
I did not.
Okay, I'll start. You had me at porn.
Tracy.
So of course I was going to read the whole thing. Although I almost stopped when I saw 500 written as a number and not written out, because I thought, if our writer doesn't know some of these basic mechanics about not starting a sentence with numbers, then do I need to go on? And I thought, no, I got to figure out where this porn is going.
For you.
I thought this was interesting. I'm not, I'm willing to go along to kind of see like what is going to happen here. And has Jane gotten herself into something that she will regret? And is there something that's going to happen with Jane? So I'm not really sure where it's going. I'm curious as an agent, as a publisher, to kind of see. And I liked the descriptions of each one of the students. I thought that was really well done, not over the top. So anyway, you had me at porn. Go ahead.
I could jump in now. I was keen to continue to read on overall. Excuse me. The questions I had were fine for now. What I mean by that is I had enough things I still wanted / needed to know as we moved on that would continue to help me read. For one, I kind of guessed this was a person teaching a college class, but I don't technically know that yet. The phrase geriatric teenager, I went back and forth on a little bit. It paused me a little longer than I think the writer wants me to pause on that idea. So I'll just note that in passing. My notion had to be, are you telling me the teenager is really old, or this really old person's teenage-like? And so I had a moment of kind of slowing down there. So I did circle it. But when we slid into in reference to Sappho and things like that, it felt a little more collegiate in that capacity of reflecting on those things. I was good with running on with it. It did also, in the back of my mind, start making me think about what my definition of porn is. And to some degree, quite frankly, I've realized that mine usually doesn't involve solely words. But with that said, I'm fine having that debate in the back of my head as I consider, as somebody who teaches collegiate students as well too, the kind of oh shit moments after you say something and realize you maybe shouldn't have said it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with both Tracy and Ty. I will say, dear writer, that when I got to Jane had no idea where her last comment came from, which is the last paragraph on the first page. I have my highlighter there only because I've been hearing from the narrator, Jane, internally since the slip, right? And so we keep sort of pulling back. We talk about the one student, then we talk about the next student, and then Jane had no idea. So we just keep pulling back from what actually happened, which was the slip. And I really, really wanted to hear Jane trying to like cover up the mistake, and while she's thinking these things. I just would love to still be in the room or on the Zoom hearing Jane like, what I mean is, but I've said that, you know, and then at the same time, we're still hearing what's going on in her head. Because I just felt like we had pulled away from the hilarious moment with all of this thought. And I just think the hilarious moment is so rich for mining this scene, so that you almost have two things happening at the same time, which is Jane sort of like quickly trying to like pull the words back into her mouth and saying all of these other things while these other things are going on in her mind. I just thought there's a way to amp up all of this uncomfortableness, and sort of comical. It was very comical, and I just thought there's a way to make it even more so. I don't want to leave the Zoom and what's happening. I'd like to see a little more of what's actually going on in the here and now while Jane's considering all of these other things.
That's good.
Sarah Ames goes to the park.
Okay, are we ready?
Yep.
I think so.
Okay. Fiction. Sarah Ames goes to the park. Sarah Ames slouches in a black naga hide and steel wheelchair, the nursing home standard issue. A belt straps her in, but there is no cushion to soften the seat. She scoots with her feet to escape to the edge of the small garden whenever no one's watching. It used to be here, I'm sure of it. Over there, that's where the bench was. The one we used to sit on, Jem and me, under the big old oak dripping with Spanish moss and bugs. Jeb would brush them off my shoulders and Mother would frown. Years later, so many years later, we sat there to watch our grandchildren play. And here, straight ahead, was the rose garden. Such pretty roses, coral yellow and pink, so many colors and reds. I can still see the red ones climbing up a trellis, all ruby bright against the jade leaves. I can still smell their floral sweetness. Or is that honeysuckle climbing the fence just behind the bench? Jeb would pull the stems and place them on my tongue. I can still taste their tangy honey. Sarah Ames is old in years, old in spirit, old in body. She is ready to pass on, to be with Jeb once again. She has watched her 3 children scatter over the earth, chasing their careers, and watched Jeb, her husband of 67 years, die. All of their friends, too. And there, yes, to the right and down the path, peace is the carousel. Listen to Calliope calling. High-pitched horns and pipes and, oh, whistles, yes, the whistles. The notes all dancing around each other. The children, even me, I shouldn't admit it. What will people think? I guess it doesn't matter now.
Who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay.
I did not bring in, and so I felt the need to move on and continue to read. So that's the first plus I'll give this overall. Um, I liked the transition from her thinking to just the straightforward statement, Sarah Ames is old. And I think that that's something that can continue a little bit into the future, I hope as well too. I did pause for a moment. The first paragraph when we're in Sarah's mind, when it says, we sat there to watch our grandchildren play, I wrote a note to myself real quickly and asked, was this too telling? I'm not going to stand on that as being correct all the way, but I did kind of pause there. I felt like I was moving. I felt like I was being told something as an audience member, as opposed to her thinking something through per se, from her point of view. That was a moment for me where I got a little bit rocky and wondered if the writer was too conscious of me as an audience member rather than more conscious of Sarah's thought process. But outside of that, I was good to move on. And just the notion of something small, a woman going to a park as being a story is something that I'm enjoy small stuff in that kind of way. So I've got a little bit of extra interest in me just from the title alone.
For me, I'll go ahead and know if that's okay. One of the lines that really captured my interest, because I wanted to see where this was going to go, was the last line in that opening paragraph. She scoots with her feet to escape to the edge of the small garden whenever no one is watching. So, you know, if we have this woman in this kind of condition and she's looking to escape, then I want to see where she wants to go, you know, and why that's important. I will say that I'm a little bit concerned about this formatting, because we're already in her point of view, and then to put so much in italics, and because they're internal thoughts. There are writers like Stephen King who would say you don't need to do that. You're already in her train of thought. The more sophisticated way is just continue on and allow her to describe what it is she's thinking or seeing, rather than putting it into the italics form with the actual internal thoughts. So, because then when it goes back to Sarah Ames as old, then it goes back to something that's a little jarring. So it didn't have a flow for me that I was looking for. It seemed a little disjointed. And I wondered, well, what more could happen from here? I mean, is she going to put herself into a dangerous situation and off herself? Or, you know, I thought, where's this going to go from here? Is somebody going to come and rescue her? So I just felt like I wasn't sold on the structure, the formatting. Felt like it was a little disconnected and a little disjointed for me anyway.
Yeah. I am a fan, returning writers will know. I am a fan of variety, sentence variety. And so I loved the break after the two internal paragraphs with a really short, direct sentences. Sarah Ames is old in years, old in spirit, old in, you know, it's a very different kind of way of talking than the internal conversation that she's having, or the reminiscing that she's having. But I will say, at the same time, it does sort of comment backwards on what I just read. I think I know all of this. And so I thought this was an opportunity to maybe just move us a little bit more forward with where the scene is taking place. Because I kind of already know that. I love what you've written. But I think there's a way, you know, she's ready to pass on to be with Jeb once. I think I get all of that from her internal thinking. And so I'd love to get a little more information about where she's at, what's going on around her, before she goes back into reminiscing and thoughts, which I'm realizing may sound a little bit like what I said on the last story. But I just kind of, we got to this, I also noticed escape, Tracy. So we have this moment and then we're gone from it for the rest of the page. And I just kind of want to be re-anchored in the here and now that's not Sarah's own recollections.
And I think, piggybacking off of that, Noah, I think I'm a little bit concerned that we're getting a little bit of extra telling rather than showing. So if she's ready to pass on and then something happens, then the surprise for the most part is basically gone. You know, it kind of like mitigates it a little bit. Right. So if I don't know what's coming next, so that may mean nothing to the writer, because I don't know what's coming next. But if that is somewhere coming closely next, then I think I would keep in mind that we're giving an awful lot of way through telling, instead of just allowing the story to unfold and for us to be able to go click, 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 click. Yes, of course, the escape and have it make sense. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Okay. Okay.
I don't want to speak for anybody else.
Okay. Penny, did that make sense? Ready,
I
Stevie?
did.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm sorry, I keep missing. I don't know why. Okay, this one is fiction. It's called Zoot Cat and the Space Vet, and I sure hope I don't laugh. It's funny. Okay. The Xenovet's patient stood patiently on its hind legs in the diagnostic chamber of her clinic, slowly swishing its tail. As the scanning and analysis proceeded, the vet asked her medical system, "What species is that thing?" The computer replied, "Unknown, no precedent, distinct feline features similar to the extinct cats of Earth. Breathes standard atmosphere, 2.2 meters tall, and 105 kilos. Meets criteria for assignment as male. Communication link is ready, and med data is on screen. Translation should improve as you converse." What kind of people clothes is it wearing? I'd swear I'm watching a cartoon from my grandpa's ancient vid library. Terran description would be a large feline in a zoot suit. That is a fedora. His ears are sticking through. Mid-20th century photos of Black men dancing in overlarge padded shoulder suit coats and high-waisted pants appear on the monitor. Welcome to my clinic. My name is Dr. Chardonnay Dash. Please call me Dr. Chard. What can I do for you? The comlink was successful, and the Zoot Cat said, "My name is Dieter. Call me Dieter. I have pain in my belly." "When did this start, Dieter?" "I unfolded my ship at this way station to get a repair of my water system. When I opened the hatch, I saw what I thought was a worm rat, so I pounced and ate it. It has not agreed with me. Please, I need to be on my way." Zarathustra's butt crack, thought Chard. This cat has no idea what he's fallen into. Did anyone else meet you when you arrived?
Stevie, that was a great reading. I really enjoyed that. Great characters, voices there.
I love that, but it cracks me up.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say that anybody who knows Zarathustra and actually uses that in a funny line is like, kudos. Because I'm really big into Zarathustra and Zoroastrianism and all of that stuff. So that threw me. That really startled me when I read that. I thought, what? Okay, good. I thought this was very clever. I thought it was really interesting. I thought there could be a better transition maybe for when Dr. Chard starts to talk, because I was getting a little bit confused there. But that was just a very small thing. I thought it was all very clever, the details, and rich, and I'll just leave it at that. I thought it was interesting. I would definitely turn the page to see what was going to happen next. Like, what has he fallen into?
Yeah, I felt the same way. I want to celebrate all the information that's on this page that's delivered in a way that doesn't feel like I'm being delivered information. It's not, it was all through conversation. It was that sort of thing. And even sort of the way the doctor is talking changes from what species is that thing to how the doctor speaks to there's a difference in how the doctor is talking about it versus talking to it. And Tracy, your Zarathustra, did I say that right? Mine is Dr. Chardonnay Dash. That is the greatest character name ever. And
that was
it
good.
can only be better by please call me Dr. Chard. It's fantastic. So I'm not sure if that's intended to be as delightful as I found it, but I loved it.
Yeah, very good.
I'm with the other two as well. I mean, I have to admit the title alone gave me enough to go with, and that there was a cat in a zoot suit paid off for me to some degree. So I'll admit that it was. I mean this in the most loving way. It's just weird enough that I want to keep reading, but not so weird that I feel that I've been bypassed in some way. So even if I felt like a small example, I unfolded my ship at this way station. I circled the word unfolded just for me, but I'm totally fine with not exactly knowing what that means yet. It's just weird enough, but if I'm able to swallow the rest of what I've already read, that's not so odd at all. One of the things I think is very challenging when you are quote unquote creating a world. I try to say this to my students every so often. I will readily admit, you lovely folks, I am not a strong genre writer. But one of the things I say over and over to my students is that I will believe anything as long as you follow your own rules. So whatever the rules are to this world that you have created, I'm good with it as long as I don't go, wait, would they do that in this world? And so far, that has not been a thing for me. The notion that a doctor sees a kind of animal, it's not quite sure what it is, but we are in a future where it can still be dealt with and diagnosed is interesting. And I will lastly note there is the last hook where the doctor asks, did anyone else meet you when you arrived? Which does not feel like a vet question to ask. So I'm assuming / hoping this is going to be to crack open what the kind of real mystery of this is. It's not what this creature is eaten. Instead, that something much more dramatic is about to go. And then, of course, my other question moving forward is why does this doctor know to ask this question? What are the, what's the drama there? So I think there's a world of possibility with this, and I hope that it'll be executed as the prior portion has been.
And going back off of what Ty has said about being in that world or someone else's world that's being created, while we don't understand quite what unfolded in the ship means, but we do very quickly understand what verm rat. We get a picture for that, which was very clever, and that the cat pounces on it and eats it. So, that's bringing us back into a reality we can kind of appreciate and understand, and grounds us again. And for a spec fiction writer, just sci-fi writer to do that shows a lot of skill. It shows that you're giving us things that we may not quite understand, but yet you're bringing us back into something that grounds us, and where we all can kind of feel like, okay, we're grounded there. We know what this means, what this must mean. Now we got to figure out what it's going to mean for this cat. But yeah, I agree with both of you, and really good to pick up on that. Why does the vet know this to even ask at the end? So nice tension set up there. This was fun.
So, ready for the next?
Yes.
Okay. This is fiction. It's called I Am Peppa. I am Peppa, daughter of the healer Safiya, an unknown seed. I have lived for 15 summers in Juval village, found midway along the Grand Mountain Trail. Half a day's trek either up to the crest or down to the river. With Agata and Lineda, I flitted through the woman's hut like a bee after pollen, waiting for the blare of the ram's horn to call us to the girls' becoming woman ceremony. Our mothers and aunts had arrived at the women's hut in early morning to ready us for the most important ceremony of our lives. Mama Safiya and her sister Ciara washed my body in cold river water and hid their grins at the sight of my young girl's breasts. I smiled with them, even as I blushed, but their chests, hidden under many necklaces and heavy woven tunics, looked so large that I whispered grateful words for my small size to First Woman, goddess of health and fertility. After they dried my body, Mama smoothed precious flaxseed oil onto my skin. When she finished, I pulled the bearskin around my naked limbs to block the springtime chill. Mama and Ciara washed my hair, oiled it until it shone, and then combed out the tangles and plaited it. Into the braid, they wove copper beads and short speckled feathers from the wings of woodhens. I pulled the heavy braid over my shoulder to admire its gleam and the way the copper beads glinted against my dark hair. I stroked the soft feathers, reminders of the bravery of woodhens when they lure predators away from their ground-nested chicks. Someday I might need to gather all the scraps of bravery I harbored in the face of unknown dangers. But today, excitement, push that thought into the netherworld.
Would one of you like to start this time?
Yeah, I'll start. I read this whole thing and I didn't have a place where I stopped. I want to call out to the writer how the verb tenses change in the beginning. I am, I have lived, and then simple past, I flitted. It's an interesting way to come into the story. And I was trying to track how much was in the past versus what was happening now. I sensed that everything was in the past, and when I got to the end of the page, we were returning to the present, like the next page would be in the here and now, but I'm not sure. So that verb tense thing was something I noticed. So I'm just saying to the writer, I'm hoping that you have noticed it too, and that there's a reason that the verbs change that way, that the narrator announces themselves in this way, but then sort of shifts into a different sort of memory, I think, or it's just happened and we're about to get to the present. So I have a little question around that. And we're hearing from the narrator throughout the whole page, and that might be what this book intends to do, to solely speak from the position of one person. I would hazard to request to hear some other voices, even if the narrator is only remembering or relating what they said, just for some variety. I sort of referenced this earlier. I'm someone who likes a little sentence variety, and so there's a way to sort of put some different kinds of way of communicating onto the first page by having a different voice talk for a little bit. So maybe there's one of the two women who are helping could be saying something that moves the information along, just so that it's very methodical and we're going down the page, and it may be establishing something. I don't know what the rest of the book is. I'm just looking at the first page. So I think I just wanted to hear a different voice at some moment, just to break up the sameness of the narration.
I'm going to jump in and say I agree with you, Noah. And in particular, I would, because this is ceremonial and because we have somebody whose name suggests to me that she's higher ranking, Mama, that may be the person who can explain, for example, the wood hen to me. And so I hear a different voice, but have the same information come my way. Because you've also referenced, I'm uncertain of the narrator's age, and that's okay right now. I don't have to know that information, but it suggests she is less formed, I guess is what I'm going to go with for now. She seems in some capacity younger or less experienced. And so I think going ahead and bringing in another voice like that would help potentially as well, but still kind of give me that information. I'll also admit I was trying to compare in my brain why I didn't bring in this time, even though I was meeting a lot of names, which is something I said earlier that I did do. So I was trying to measure myself. And I think one of the reasons I don't is because I'm only hearing from a single perspective right now. And because there's not a lot of dialogue, I'm not sweating who the quote unquote important people are yet. So that balance between those two things is something I'm kind of being conscious of as I'm looking at this first page. My only other concern I'll mention is I hope that what we've learned here is going to come up in some capacity later as well too. This feels like you could tie this off and this would be one segment of a story. If that were the case, I would have questions about why I was introduced this information. So I'm just saying to the writer too, I'm assuming you're planting seeds that will then sprout later on throughout the piece. But please be conscious of that.
We've said many times during these to guard against too much flashback. In the first opening pages, especially up to the first 10 to 15 pages. Watch for falling back into too much the backstory or flashbacks, because a lot of editors today say they don't want to see any of those flashbacks until they're a good 20-25 pages into a story, because otherwise it really indicates to them that maybe the writer hasn't chosen the actual best place to open. So in other words, if we're already dropping back by the second paragraph into, you know, the young girl's body being prepared for this ceremony by her mothers and aunts and being washed out, we've already stepped back into a flashback. Perhaps that should have been where the story started. I also picked up on the different verb tenses, which always kind of like are like 5,000 nails going down 10 miles of scratchboard or blackboard for me, but that's okay. I was curious because I love ceremonial things. Yeah. And I love to read about ceremonial things, although this felt like I probably, these were pretty much typical details for most ceremonies, you know, the washing, the cleansing of the body. But I will say what was curious to me was that there obviously are more than one, because they're being prepared for and listening for the horn to call them to the girls becoming women ceremony. And of course, my mind goes, oh God, what's going to happen to these poor girls? But so let me just say that I Am Peppa starting off almost reminds me of the Call Me Ishmael kind of opening. And so if we're going to go with that, then I would say consider, like what Noah was suggesting, allow Peppa to tell us a little bit about the other girls. What are the other girls? What are their reactions? We don't even maybe need all their names, but or maybe we do need a name so that we're connecting and we're seeing how each one of these girls, you know, is tittering around, or they're excited, or maybe someone's not so excited. Maybe someone knows something more than the other. I don't know. I'm curious, but I feel like this needs to be reworked some. Too much flashback too soon. And the verb tenses can make this very confusing. And I would also consider the details of the ceremony because they feel like they're pretty typical of what we would know for most ceremonies. So, you know, is there anything else that maybe could be something a little extraordinary, if that makes sense? Okay.
All right, we ready for the next one?
Yes.
Okay, this is fiction. It's called Backcountry. Letty and her husband held their children, Leela and Archie, in their laps as the chairlift creaked towards the top of Bolton Mountain. An August sun beamed down, and an expanse of white bark pine trees reached across the Cascade Mountain range as far as they could see. Mama, off! Archie squirmed in Letty's arms as they approached the dismount at the top of the lift. She looked down at her hiking boots and thought how strange it would be not to glide off on skis, as she had done countless times before. Letty and Joe lifted the children and walked towards the ridgeline. A gust of wind carried smells of pine, sweet huckleberry, and smoke from a distant wildfire. She set Archie down, and he toddled towards a group of teenagers taking selfies against the wilderness backdrop. Joe set Leela down. She ran after her brother. Archie disappeared beyond the group, and adrenaline bolted through Letty. She spotted him and ducked under a piece of orange tape tied between two aspens to scoop him up as his feet windmilled past the sign for an intermediate ski slope. Caught you just in time, she said. Her heartbeat slowed. Joe and Leela ducked under the tape and caught up to them. I see our car in the parking lot, Mommy, Layla said. Their black SUV looked like an ant lined up among the others at the base of the mountain. Letty squinted against the sun. She'd skied Bolton since she was Leela's age. As long as they followed the slope, they'd return to their car in time for lunch and before the afternoon thunderstorm in the weather forecast. She set Archie down and took his hand. It's rocky through here, so I'm going to help you. I go, Mama, he pulled.
I rang in. Did anyone?
I didn't hear him.
I didn't hear you. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So I'll go first. I rang in. Oh, I'm trying to scroll this screen like I have control over this thing. No, thank you. I got it. I have my page piece of paper here. I want to point out we have a lot of names on this first page, and I thought the author did a great job of helping me keep track of who was who. I'm going to be really vulnerable and reveal that if there are two people who have the same letter name, there's Letty and Leela, I'm immediately panicking that I'm not going to be able to track who is who. But dear author, you did a nice job, so I'd never forget. When later in the second paragraph you say Letty and Joe lifted the children, I'm reminded who the parents are, who the kids are, and that really helped me keep track of names, which is sort of a theme we've been talking about today. Where I did ring in was Letty squinted against the sun. She had skied Bolton since she was Leela. Suddenly we're looking back. And this is not to say that this was a huge flashback, but at this point on the page, we were commenting on something from history, and there was this little peak of excitement when Archie disappeared. And I was like, aha, here we go. And then her heartbeat slowed. And I was like, oh, okay, so we're fine. So we continue. And then we look back to the time when she had skied there in the past. And I thought, what's going to happen? What's happening? Like, what's the next thing? So I'm sure it's at the top of the next page, dear reader. So I just want to congratulate you on that. But there was a lot of setup here, and I thought something was about to happen. And then when there was the glancing back, which is important information, I'm sure, for the story. But at that point in the page, I thought, when are we getting to the thing that's going to happen? Why are we all here? It's a beautifully set table, by the way. I see it. I know who the people are. I just feel like we got this little hiccup of oh, there's a little panic, but then it was okay. And then it just sort of dissipated before, by the end of the page. And I was ready. I'm ready to jump in. So if something's going to happen, you can do it right there. Avalanche. Quick question. Yeah, avalanche. Do we know how old Leela is? We don't. Is she older or younger than Archie? Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. Because I couldn't decide. I figured she must be older since she spots the car from way up there, but I wasn't entirely sure because she's also set down by her father. So yeah, I kind of saw them as the same age. I wasn't sure though. Yeah, a little confused there. Mm-hmm. Okay. Ty?
I agree. I don't know the age either. And I have the same feedback that Noah does in terms of my question is kind of what's next, quite simply. And so I was okay to turn the page, but I didn't have a sense yet of what was going to take place at all, because this little bit of drama went away. And also the reader in me kind of felt like, well, they set themselves up for this own little problem they're having here. This is their own fault. So this is what you get when you take kids somewhere semi-dangerous. So there was that as well too. So at this point, I mean it lovingly, but I'm not quite sympathetic with them yet. And this just feels like a moment that I just go, okay, well, these things happen. Watch your kid. So as somebody who has two not so little kids anymore, who have done stuff like this before. So my biggest question was that I would flip the page, but I need to know we're going somewhere pretty quickly here so that I feel comfortable continuing to move on.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that both of you have said so far. The one sentence flashback didn't bother me so much, in that I felt like if you're going to do a flashback early, get it done and over with in one sentence. That's good.
Yes. Okay. I will. I underscore that. Good job.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because you're at least putting some kind of context there, like she's been here and done this before, and therefore whatever it is about to happen might really fall on her shoulders in terms of responsibility, because she should have known better or could have known better or whatever. So I kind of thought, okay, but I never really knew how old Leela was when she said she's been skiing this since she was Leela's age. How old is that? 2, 6? I don't know. So, but at any rate, I'm exactly what Ty said too. I need something to happen here. I need something to go on here. Because I'm like, okay, you're setting the table, as Noah said, okay, nice details here, but what is happening? What is about to happen? I need to know something that is about to happen. I peeked when Archie disappeared for a few moments. It's like, oh, here we go. So understand, as Noah says, dear reader, understand that that's what like captured us right there, because that's about the level going down on that first page that you want something at that point to happen, to resonate a little harder than, you know, her heart slows down really fast that quickly.
Yeah.
And other than that, just a couple of language tweaks that I'd like to suggest. Remember that the word is toward, not towards. I see this a lot with my SNU college students because they haven't learned yet that towards with the S is the British version. So just kind of keep that in mind. I see it all the time. And then the other thing about ducked under a piece of orange tape, I think I would just, you know, sharpen that a little bit, just duck under the orange tape instead of a piece. Because we have Joe ducking under the tape, which is much sharper sounding language than ducked under a piece of, and that's really micro editing there, super micro editing. But I'm pointing it out to show that when something is already fairly clean here, that just those little pieces, if they were that sharpened even more, would really, really impress an editor or an agent. Okay, well, we need something to happen here. Okay.
Ready for the next one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is fiction. It's called The Mall Days. The world is full of beautiful boys, boys carved out of soap or stone, young men with baby oiled skin and unchecked ambitions. Sierra knows because she goes online and because so many of them work at the coffee shop near her new apartment. At the coffee shop, the boys all have a disdain for the customers, which she suspects is fake, and a shine to their cheekbones, which she suspects is makeup. Every morning in the week since leaving home, Sierra sits at the counter with her notebooks and laptop and orders a pea milk latte. They milk everything in LA. And lets the boys say snarky things to her like, pea milk is bullshit. And you're older than the other writers who come in here. She's 33, but she has a grim face. Sierra was a late bloomer. She was raised inside of the mall, but her mother's store went bankrupt when Sierra was 13, and she was thrown out of that blissful plastic world. To pass the time in high school, she exercised the ponies of rich girls while they were probably off having sex somewhere. In college, she kissed 2 boys and a girl, and they all tasted like stale beer. Now it is these boys, these beautiful 20-somethings, the kind you might see on posters in the teenager's room, the ones you used to call names like Heartbeat or Hunk, who please her the most. With them, Sierra always feels like she's being kind to her younger self, even if it's too late for that girl. The coffee shop boys are too young to remember a time when the mall was king, when it really ruled the world. Imagine a place, Sierra likes to tell them, before the internet, where you could buy anything.
Tracy, did you ring in on the kind you might see on posters?
Yes.
I have that highlighted too. Why did you do that?
Because I really felt like we were getting some of the same stuff over and over about boys, and it wasn't really going anywhere, and I needed something to happen.
I kind of think that too. I did it because it's a little, it's odd. I feel like I'm the you there because of my age, but I'm not sure, you know what I mean? It's a little disjointed. But and it was at that point where I was like, okay, what's up? I think it was a combination. I don't want to step on you, but I was like, oh my God, that's exactly where I highlighted too. It's exactly at that point where the narrator kind of turns for a second and talks to us directly. And I'm like, I'm okay. You don't got to talk to me. Like, let's get back. But I want to let you talk. I didn't mean to step on your comments.
No, that's fine. For me, I just felt like it wasn't open. It wasn't going anywhere for me. I needed to see like some kind of arc or something, and we're already flashing back. This is going back to what we've discussed already a couple of times about all the flashbacks and how she's grown up. But where is the story? Where is the arc? Where are we going? Is there some boy in particular she's impressed with there? That she keeps going back and she keeps taking this verbal abuse, basically. So I needed some kind of arc, something that's going to happen other than her obsession with all kinds of boys carved out of soap or stone or whatever. It just, I couldn't find it. I couldn't find something that was really going to lead me down some story arc.
Yeah. Ty said something, I think on the last one, Ty, or was the one before that, about we're not sure how to open the story. Because I when you made that comment, I thought of this one, because I have 1, 2, and 3 on this piece of paper for each of the paragraphs, because you could start this story, you could rearrange these paragraphs and they would still work. They all sort of open the story.
Interesting.
So
yeah.
I thought, okay, it feels like maybe you're not, they're all, first of all, writer, these are the lovely paragraphs. I love the snarky baristas. They're terrific. And we could have a little more of that, which would be lovely. But I really feel like you've got 3 separate openings to this story, because any of them would work. And they all work in a different way. So you kind of have to decide how you want to do it. Because when I read it, I feel like there's 3 solid tries here, but the writer hasn't decided which one. So maybe he or she is hedging their bet by putting all of them on the page. Ty, did you want to say anything?
I'm going to pick up on where you were. It kind of helped me contextualize my thoughts a little bit better too. So thank you both. I think one of the things is we're hovering above what's going to happen in the story, but not actually in what's going to happen in the story. And I could only have said that as thirds for the record. So thank you for kind of giving me the runway for that. I think what's happening here. I mean, my questions are: is she going to? She's the quote unquote old person in the room, according to herself. So is she going to be the one who educates them? Is she going to be the one who discovers the gem that is inside of these fake boys? And because she's kind of referencing, growing up in the mall and stuff like that, I think that's got an interesting potential to it. But if the job here is just to educate these kids that they're fake, but they don't know a fun fake that used to exist, kind of thing. I don't know that kind of is going to be enough conflict for me to kind of go with the story. So I'll kind of mention that. But yeah, I think the issue here is I think we're just a little too far back from where the story is getting ready to go. I take this advice, I'm going to say with a grain of salt. Go to the next page and start there. And just let's see what that start is like when you have gotten past this portion of kind of getting us into the world. Let's see where we are if you just start us on page 2 when we're now in the world as opposed to entering it. And that may be something that you then come back on overall too. But yeah, I think we're pulled back too much and we need to kind of dive in. But I agree with Noah that I think there are numbers of starts here. But the very base of it, my antenna was up, this notion of fake and real. And I will be so bold as to say, I think people who write tend to think that we're real. So like that we really see the world and want to talk about it in that way. So I'm expecting that. And as somebody who's older than 33 with also a grim face, I'm with you on that. But I want to kind of see where you go from there.
Yeah, keep in mind that agents and editors really want somewhat of a clear, not somewhat, want a clear want, need, or desire by the end of page 1. Certainly no further than the top of page 2. We need to know, what does the protagonist want and what is preventing the protagonist from getting that? At least some sort of hint. And here we're meandering and we're going along, but we don't really know what is the want, need, or the desire yet. Does that make sense?
I have a little bit of theater training and have done some shows here or there. And when you go to acting class, they talk about your objective and your super objective. And while I don't try to operate in my everyday life that way, when I do think about my own character, sometimes I try to think, okay, what are they trying to get? And that doesn't feel good when you're talking about people, but when you're talking about characters, I think sometimes it can be rather clarifying. And so that may be another way to kind of go at it from Sierra's point of view. What is it she's trying to get out of this? Why do you keep showing up at a place where people low-key talk shit to you? Why do you go when you feel like you're the odd one out to some degree? And there's plenty of good reasons that can be really interesting. I mean, the stories of people going into their non-native habitats, whatever those may be, can be quite exciting.
Yeah, she's a writer. It could be that she's going in there for material.
Right.
You know, she's using them. They think they're, snarky to her. She could be using them. We don't know, but we need something. We need something. Yeah.
Okay. The next one is fiction, Children in the Wood. I ran my fingers over the raised gold lettering with pride. It was the first extravagant gift I'd given myself after graduation. The initials on the fine leather briefcase spelled DCS and stood for Dr. Carol Stacy. It had been a long, hard climb. No second glances were given to the kids from the reservation. That's what the townies called it. A couple of double wides perched on a barren patch of dust snuggled against the community's dump. The school kids called our home the dumpster and us trash. In a way, we were, for the scrap heap was our playground. 3 brothers and 4 sisters raised on a trucker's pay didn't make for full stomachs. After Dad ran off, Mom went batshit crazy. Schizophrenia, they said, when the asylum took her and the orphanage took us. I swore I'd never go hungry again. I shuddered and shrugged free of the memory, trading the clouds of my childhood for those that passed beneath. The smooth drone of the Cessna's twin engines was reassuring, as there was no place to land. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly, as I watched the monotonous green of the Amazon rainforest unwind beneath. The pilot descended, cutting a way through the cumulus clouds that seemed a perpetual presence. We were following the path cut by the Amazon River and flying low, about 1,000 feet above the canopy. Like a giant bird of prey, our shadow undulated as it embraced the hills and valleys. This was my first real job as an anthropologist. Hardwood Enterprises wasn't first on my preferred list of employers. Still, no deluge of opportunities were banging down my door.
Was that the first? Was
I
that the
think
one
you
you
were.
chimed? Okay. I chimed in because once again, we were delving back into backstory, flashing back long stretch. And I felt like we needed to know where we were first. I mean, we don't really know where we are until we're 3 or 4 paragraphs in and we suddenly find ourselves on a plane. And that probably should have been established up front, right? The setting, so that we know where we are first, especially before we're delving into backstory. And about how we got there. And then as far as the rest of it, I'll just say, I felt like, I mean, there's some really interesting details here, but I feel like right now it's all telling. And it would be so much better if the story were allowed to unfold and this Dr. Carol Stacy lands, and then we see from her experiences and the interactions that this is her first job, that perhaps this wasn't her preferred choice, that she's in the Amazon, and all these things start to unfold without us having been told all of this right up front. I'll leave that. Okay.
Yeah, I I had a similar. This is sort of an echo of previous submissions we've spoken of this morning. There, I appreciate, writers, what you're trying in all of these cases, that there is a good faith effort to give me, the reader, as much information as is needed. My sense is that in many of these, the writer's like, let me get it all out so you understand the rest of the story. I feel like this is almost that these opening pages where we're getting so much information, the train station one and this one is another, packing it all in so that my sense is that the author is like, see all these details, now I'm going to tell you the story, and now that you know these details, you'll realize why the story is so important. But getting all this stuff at the outset is overwhelming. And I rang in, and I apologize. It's probably because of my age. That's always my excuse. But I swore I'd never go hungry again is literally a line from Gone with the Wind. And so if you don't know that, that's not your fault, but I do. And so I hear that and I'm like, what? Is this really a line from Gone with the Wind? And that's, I mean, if you don't know that, that's not your fault, but that's why I rang in where I did. and trading the clouds of my childhood for those that pass beneath is a solid try to transition from the memory to the present day, but it's awkward and not as smooth. I feel like you have so many pieces on this first page, having achieved, I assumed it was a PhD or some kind of doctorate. So there was that, there was the background, there was the plane ride, and then there was Hardwood Enterprises is not on my preferred list. There's a lot of things going on this first page. And so I appreciate how you put them together in an effort to get that all on the first page. But I think there's just maybe one or two things too many on the first page.
I agree. I think yes, I think the backstory is something that you can come to. If you can put us in the conflict of being in a place you didn't choose all the way, that's, I think, motivating enough for us to move forward. And then when we are told these other portions of our character's backstory, I think we will appreciate them more. So this is somebody who's been in situations before that she doesn't want to be in, but still this ability to either climb out, or perhaps this is a story of not being able to. Either way, and it's that, and I'm gonna do the caveat that Noah did to some degree too, that I absolutely respect what is going on, and it's a hard balance between what readers need to know in order to move forward and how much we can trust them to hang with us until that information comes. So please understand that my sympathy and empathy are with all of those attempts. It's a tough gig. I myself have found that in my own writing, I have to cut the first page or two, and then it may never come back again. And that hurts my feelings every damn time. But part of it, I know it. What I'm at least I'm a little conscious of. I know what I'm doing for me, but that is this for the reader. Can the reader hang with me regardless? So I respect that. And what I would say out loud too is getting folks to give you that kind of feedback can be a little bit tough sometimes. But the other side of it is this external point of view that we kind of bring to it. I mean it lovingly. If you've got somebody who's got their first gift for themselves after graduation of a briefcase and they're landing in a place they don't want to be, I'm good. Like I can hang with you a little bit longer now, and then I can start to learn these other things as we move forward.
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple of other things. The information that is within this piece tells me that this has the potential to be a really rich, interesting story. And so, we have somebody who comes from a rough background, where they've been basically impoverished. She's cherishing a briefcase with gold embossing at this point, but she's also in the Amazon. And you put me, and I always tell writers, be sure, no matter what, you've grounded the reader in time and place. In every single moment, the reader is grounded. And so from when we open, we're not grounded in a plane yet. So not till several paragraphs later, but you put me in that plane over the Amazon and you got me. I'm hooked. And then when she lands, there can be all of this dialogue between her and whoever comes to meet her. And, there can be these, this interaction with other people that shows throughout the story that her background is different from everyone else's. And she's got more moxie because of what she's had to overcome because of her background. So these things can unfold. Keep us grounded in what is the most central thing is she is flying and about to land in the Amazon. That is cool. Super cool. Yeah. And I can already feel tension building because we all come with filters and of stuff of what we think of as the Amazon and, cannibals and everything else. So, I have no idea. And we can already pick up when she lands there from whatever it is who picks her up or wherever she goes that what she's there for. We've got this lab set up for you to study this and we brought these tribes in to do whatever. She's an anthropologist, So just keep in mind that we don't, as both of these guys have said, we don't need all this up front to tell us what you're going to show us. Just show us one piece and let it unfold. I hope that helps.
Yeah,
but
dear
always
writer,
keep us grounded.
Dear writer, the paragraph 3 brothers and 4 sisters, that paragraph you could lift out and just get us to the plane. because you can come back and because we've got some backstory in paragraph 2, reference the brothers and sisters again later after we're back in the present day. We get to know your character a little bit more, and then I'm in it. So yeah, just get us to the plane quicker.
Yeah, put us on a plane over the Amazon.
I totally co-sign, Tracy. The Amazon, same thing. Indiana Jones, all of it.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm here for this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she can be nervous. She can be fingering the embossed gold lettering, you know, but we don't even need to know what DCS stands for right then. Right. We can find out when it's almost like somebody picks her up, Dr. Carol Stacy, I presume.
Oh,
you know,
look almost, at that. Yeah.
Almost like the Dr. Livingston, I presume, you know, kind of thing.
Right.
But just put her on a plane, put us over the Amazon, and we're going to follow, you know, because we don't know what kind of landing they're going to have. We don't know, you know, a whole lot of stuff. You know, we don't know who she's going to meet on the other side of that flight. All the other background stuff that can factor in later and be pieced in later.
Great advice.
Agreed. Yep.
A lot of good stuff that tells me this could be a really good story one day when it's all pulled out.
Well, the last piece is poetry. It's called Presence. Okay. Glistening needles on pines of green dance in the sunlight, silvery they seem, floating on branches up near the sky. Not seen them before, wondering why. On the beaten path. A sudden sonata, such a sweet sound. Birds, insects, and bees abound. Why now did they come to my ears, soothing my soul, releasing my fears on the beaten path? Alive, awake, present, aware, what wasn't before is now right there. Laughing, dancing, what can I say? The presence within has come out to play, off the beaten path.
Poetry experts, you to you?
I will start if I can. Poet, congratulations on tackling rhyme and meter to a certain extent. It's so tough. And so I congratulate you. I read the whole poem because I always read the whole poem. And I want to challenge you to push yourself to find more interesting words for the rhymes. Green is a good word. Seam is, you know, it rhymes, but there could be a better word that makes it a little more interesting and pushes the poem into a little more mystery or magic, if you will. You know, silver like a dream, or, you know, just instead of seam, just something a little more that gets it
concrete.
Yeah, a little more. Thank you. And I say that, thank you, Tracy, because presence is very abstract. It's incredibly abstract. So that's a tough way to start a poem, but because it's so broad. We were just talking about Amazon in the last, you know, everyone brings their own ideas about what that might be. And presence is so abstract, it could be anything. And so I want to continue on that idea with what's the poem seems to be coming towards, the presence within. And so there is something that happens, right, at the end of the poem. Something is different. And we see that in the changing from on the beaten path to off the beaten path. And so there is a loveliness when repetition is disrupted. So we get used to something, and then there's this disruption at the end. I think you have an opportunity, poet, to really bump that up. The thing that happens, it happens so quickly. And so I wonder if you would, this is so song-like that what occurred to me was after the second stanza, you might consider doing something like a bridge in a song that's different than the rest of the poem, and that gives me just a little more insight as to maybe what the presence is, or who the speaker is, or just a thing that's different than what's been happening already, so that that final stanza, when there is a change on the beaten path to off the beaten path, it's very noticeable. I think that the idea is here, there's just a way to sort of to twist a little bit more tension or friction into the poem, so that the repetition doesn't become, it doesn't fade into the background. You know, like it starts, you get the rhyme, okay, okay, okay. I think there's a way to disrupt that, inject a little more information into the poem, and then really give me an ability to appreciate this presence within in a way that I can't really right now, because it's very abstract.
There's a resource I like a lot that I might suggest to take a look at too. It's just a simple website called B Rhymes, B-Rhymes. And what I find interesting about it is it will give you, in many cases, traditional, but also slant rhymes, and also quote unquote rank them by how close they are in terms of sound. I've used that before when I've wanted to break up my sound to some degree, and kind of bridging on what Noah's mentioned before. If, for example, there were that other stanza that was a little different, I would suggest even something as moving away from the fully traditional rhyme just a little bit could give us a little bit of that disconnect that then can come and be cleaned up by the more traditional rhyme later on. If nothing else, give it a quick look. It's a helpful resource, and kind of lets you look at it word by word, as opposed to the way I think a lot of us integrate rhyme, which is we already know we're going to get there. Like we already have that word in our head and we're trying to land there. I found that helpful. One other thing I'll mention, and I would love for you all to jump in on this one too, with your thoughts. I'm always a little reserved about questions in poems. I'm not declaring that as a rule from which I always stand, but generally speaking, I generally feel like a question is a setup for me because you already have the answer, as the writer. And so I will just kind of mention that in passing, that those for me sometimes feel like someone needs to get somewhere, as opposed to actually moving towards that thing all the way. As a side note, I do that with essays a lot as well too. It's one of my little isms, and I know that, so I will readily confess that Noah and Tracy may feel very differently about that than I do. But this, sometimes when it's 4 o'clock on a Friday and we're doing the reading, our prejudices come out, and one of mine is the question. So
yeah, mine is ing words, which this poem has a lot of, and so I just like, poet, choose one or two, because needles glisten on pines of green just seems sharper than glistening needles, you know. So just really kind of, it's sort of like a mechanic with a wrench, just like go through and really tighten the language where you think it might get just a little sharper, when we're using such brief language on the page. Each word has like an value. And so you just kind of, you know, you've seen them, I see them: glistening, wondering, releasing, laughing. There's just a lot of ings. So so that means they're all happening at the same time, which is valuable, and it's part of the poem. I understand that. But in terms of listening, which the poem is also a big part of, really, for me, 4 o'clock on a Friday, my red flags are ing words. So I'm purely letting you know that. Yeah.
I concur with everything that both Ty and Noah have said about this. And but I will say, Ty, that I kind of like a well-formed question that goes in there, but I expect the exploration for an answer.
For sure.
And that, for me, was what was missing. So why now do they come to my ears, soothing my soul, releasing my fears on the beaten path? My question there was, why does the soul need to be soothed? What fears need to be released? So, you know, when Noah talks about this being so abstract, yeah, there are lots of concrete descriptions, but it's abstract in terms of the presence or the feeling. And what I would like to see, or what I would encourage the writer to maybe take another look at, is in that next stanza, go into giving us something a little bit more concrete about the particular speaker and what is going on in the speaker's life, that the soul needs to be soothed and the fears need to be, what fears? What is troubling the soul at this point? Because that then pulls us in where we now, you give me your story, I get mine. And now I can kind of relate to this, the speaker of this poem. I can relate now because now I'm like, oh yeah, you got a soul, you got fears. Yeah, I got fears too, brother. And you know, and but I need to know what they are. And I need to know that the speaker is actually looking for the exploration, looking for the answer to the very question that the speaker of the poem presents to us. You know, let's see that exploration. Like, why do you think on this particular moment these things have been noticed for the first time? Why? Why is the speaker more alive or more noticed, more aware at this particular point than ever before? Does that make sense?
It does. It points to something I thought of too, which is I think a lot of us would like sign on to this experience, right? Like I think for most people, I don't want to speak for everybody, but it's not an unusual occurrence to be out in nature and to find yourself suddenly like, oh, I can breathe again. You know, we were talking at the beginning about how I'm living in Salt Lake City, these big skies, like I really get that. So that part, what's happening, that part of what's happening in the poem, which is most of the poem, is not that unusual. And so what Tracy is pointing towards, and I want to sort of hitch my wagon to, is the thing that will be unusual is, poet, what's the fear and what's the soul and what's the you in this? So there's an opportunity to put yourself in the poem in a way that you're not there just yet.
I'm going to echo one last bit of that too, that I think there may be a little way in as well. The first time we have a direct reference to the speaker is my, which is in the second stanza, third line. And then we do have an I a little bit later on as well too. It may be that needs to happen a little earlier too, this personalization of things. And so that then can delve us into the specifics about this particular speaker and what makes whatever he or she is going through and experiencing notable.
One of my favorite poets, and maybe because he was one of my undergrad professors and I just love him, and you guys may have heard of him or may not have, but his name is Peter Meinke. Pittsburgh, have you heard, everything he's ever published, he's published in chapbooks or poetry collections through Pittsburgh Press.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah. Peter Meinke, and I hope he's still living. I know he was in his 80s last time I thought of him. But at any rate, one of the things that he does so extremely well is he puts you in a moment of something that is happening so that you can tie yourself and ground yourself to something that is going on for the speaker of the poem. That could be fairly mundane or it could be something very unusual. But then you get some of the abstract. So you come out of that and then you go back into that specific. So you might start with something very concrete. A man getting on a train. I'm just making that up. And then what does that train represent? What does the journey represent? What does this? And then you're back to this moment of getting off the train or something along those lines. And I think a lot of times with emerging poets, they feel that they have to give us all this abstract and all of the sensory stuff, and they forget to give us the concrete personal stuff, the metaphoric stuff that we can really relate to, that's heavier a little bit. I'm trying to see if that makes any sense. I hope the Peter Meinke reference helped to clarify some of that, but you might read some of his poetry and just see what you think, because he does a lot of this with the sensory, but he always grounds us in something super concrete that relates to that particular persona that is speaking within the poem. And his last name is Meinke. Yeah, and everything's been published at Pittsburgh. Any questions of all this that we've said? Questions at all? Feel free to unmute. Penny, I'm just telling everybody what to do.
I just want to say that I think this was wonderful. All of you have such compassionate and thoughtful insight for all of us. So we're really grateful to have you here today. And Stevie, bravo on reading. You did a wonderful job.
Yes, excellent. And you know, if we don't always say so, and I think we try to, we're all impressed that there's creative effort here on every single example. And that is heart and soul. And so if I have certainly forgotten to mention that, then I apologize, but I appreciate the creativity and the mindfulness that went into every single one of these pieces. What we're talking about is fine tuning of skill and craft. That's it. The creativity is there. We're just helping you fine tune with adding a few more tools to your writer toolbox.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So any questions at all? Nothing? Well, I appreciate Noah, Ty, all of you for being here.
Yes.
Thanks
Always a
to everybody who
pleasure.
submitted. It was a
Excellent.
joy to read every piece
Yes.
and observe all this creativity. So thank you. Kenny, anything else you want?
I just want to say thank you all for taking time out of your Saturday afternoon to do this. This is such a fantastic group, and we're really lucky to have experts, but also just wonderful writers as well.